Have you ever trusted someone with your most valuable possessions, only to come back and find they'd sold everything? Have you ever been told that your personal belongings had become family property, just because you weren't there to defend them? Well, this is my story. And I guarantee the ending will show you exactly what happens when family betrayal meets legal consequences. My name is Sarah, I'm 29 years old, and I'm a Navy veteran who served 2 tours in the Middle East. For the past 11 years, I've been serving my country overseas while my family lived their lives back home. To my mother Linda, especially compared to my sister Emma, I was always the rebellious daughter who abandoned the family by joining the Navy. What she didn't know was that my grandfather had made sure I'd never be defenseless against family greed, and that very soon, a probate court would read the clause that would change everything. This story begins on what should have been a happy day, my homecoming, after my second and final deployment, but it turned into the day I discovered that the people I trusted most had betrayed me in the worst possible way. I had been deployed for 15 months this time, working in cybersecurity for naval operations in the Persian Gulf. I was finally coming home for good. My enlistment was up, and I had decided not to re-enlist. I was ready to start my civilian life, maybe expand the cybersecurity consulting business I'd been building remotely, or use my GI benefits for additional certifications. The first thing I wanted to do when I got home was check on my stuff. Before I enlisted at 18, I had carefully packed away my most valuable possessions in my childhood bedroom at Mom's house. My collection of rare first edition books that I'd been collecting since middle school, my grandmother's vintage jewelry collection that had been passed down to me, my high-end electronics and computer equipment, and various other items that meant the world to me. Don't worry, sweetheart, Mom had promised me the day before I left for boot camp. Everything will be safe here until you get back. You sure, Mom? Some of those books are really valuable. And Grandma's jewelry. Sarah, this is your home. Your things will always be safe here. That was 11 years ago. When I walked into my old bedroom, my heart stopped. It was completely empty. Not just rearranged empty. The carefully organized bookshelves were bare. The jewelry box that had sat on my dresser was gone. Even the desk where I'd kept my electronics was missing. Mom, I called out, where's my stuff? She came upstairs with a casual expression, like nothing was wrong. Oh honey, welcome home. How was your flight from Norfolk? Mom, where are my things? My room is completely empty. Well, sweetie, you've been gone for so long. We needed the space. Needed the space. For what? And where did you put my stuff? Sarah, sit down. We need to talk. That's when I knew something was very wrong. Mom, just tell me where my things are. Honey, you have to understand, you've been gone for 11 years. Some of those things were just sitting there. Mom, I specifically asked you to keep them safe. And I did, for years. But Sarah, at some point, things that are abandoned become family property. Family property. Those were my things. Sweetie, they were in my house, and you hadn't been back for them in over a decade. Because I was serving my country. You knew where I was. I know, honey. But you have to be realistic. We couldn't just keep everything forever. The pit in my stomach was growing. Mom, what did you do with my stuff? We sold some of it. You sold it. Sarah, don't get upset. We used the money for family things. I renovated the guest bathroom, and Emma needed money for her private college tuition. You sold my belongings to pay for Emma's college. It wasn't just for Emma. The bathroom renovation benefits everyone. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mom, do you have any idea what some of those things were worth? They were just old books and some jewelry. Sarah, just old books. Mom, I had a first edition copy of To Kill a Mockingbird signed by Harper Lee. Do you know what that's worth? I'm sure it wasn't that much. It's worth $8,000 by itself. The color drained from her face. What? $8,000. And that was just one book. I had dozens of rare first editions, some from the 1800s. Sarah, you're exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating. Mom, I spent years researching and collecting those books, and Grandma's jewelry collection. Some of those pieces were from the 1920s, Art Deco originals. Well, we didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't ask. You just decided that because I was overseas serving my country, my belongings were up for grabs. The conversation got worse from there. As I pressed for details, the full scope of the betrayal became clear. How much did you get for everything? I asked. Sarah, I don't remember exactly. Approximately. Maybe maybe $4,000. $4,000. Mom, my book collection alone was worth at least $20,000, and that's not counting grandma's jewelry, the electronics, everything else, the antique dealer said. You took them to an antique dealer. Well, we thought that was better than a pawn shop. Mom, you sold 30,000 worth of collect for Zoyada 4,000. We didn't know they were worth that much, because you didn't bother to find out. You could have called me. You could have done proper research. You could have taken them to auction houses. Sarah, we needed the money. For what? For Emma's tuition, for your bathroom. Those are family expenses. Paid for with my property. It wasn't your property anymore, Sarah. You abandoned it. I didn't abandon it. I was deployed. There's a difference. You chose to leave. I chose to serve my country. And you promised to keep my things safe. That was 11 years ago, Sarah. Things change. I was beyond angry at this point. Where's Emma? I want to talk to her about this college tuition that my inheritance paid for. She's at school. What school is she attending? Whitman College. It's a very good private liberal arts school. How much does it cost? Sarah, I don't see why that matters. How much? About $60,000 a year. $60,000 a year. You sold my stuff for 4,000 anches going to a 60,000 a year school. We had other money too. What other money? Your father's promotion bonus, some savings, a small loan. So you used my belongings as part of the funding for Emma's expensive college. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I left the house that day feeling more betrayed than I had ever felt in my life. I had survived 2 combat deployments, dealt with the stress of being one of the few women in my cybersecurity unit, and handled more responsibility and pressure than most people could imagine. But nothing had prepared me for the feeling of coming home to discover that my own family had stolen from me. That night, I stayed in a hotel and tried to figure out what to do. I could sue them, but family lawsuits are expensive and messy. I could just walk away and cut them out of my life, but that felt like letting them win. Then, I remembered something my grandfather had told me before he died. Grandpa William had passed away when I was 22. During my first deployment, I had gotten emergency leave to come home for the funeral, and we'd had a conversation that I hadn't thought about in years. Sarah, he had said, I want you to know how proud I am of you for serving. Thank Grandpa, your grandmother and I. We understand what sacrifice means. We know that when you're overseas, you can't be here to protect your interests. What do you mean? I mean that sometimes, family members who stay home think they can take advantage of family members who are serving abroad. You think someone would do that? I hope not, but just in case, I've made some provisions in my will. What kind of provisions? Let's just say that I've made sure that anyone who serves in the military will have certain protections, even after I'm gone. Grandpa, what are you talking about? You'll understand if you ever need to. Just remember, if anyone ever tries to take advantage of you because you're serving overseas, my will has something to say about that. At the time, I thought he was just being overly cautious. Grandpa William had served in Vietnam, and he had a tendency to be protective of military family members. But now, sitting in that hotel room, his words came back to me with crystal clarity. The next morning, I called the law firm that had handled Grandpa's estate, Morrison and Associates. This is Jennifer. Hi, this is Sarah Chen. My grandfather was William Chen, and you handled his estate about 7 years ago. Oh yes, Miss Chen. How can I help you? I need to speak with someone about my grandfather's will, specifically about any provisions that might relate to military service. Let me transfer you to Mr. Morrison. He handled your grandfather's estate personally. A few minutes later, I was talking to David Morrison, the senior partner. Sarah, good to hear from you. Your grandfather spoke about you often. How's your Navy service going? I just finished my final deployment. Actually, Mr. Morrison, I need to ask you about something my grandfather mentioned before he died. He said there were provisions in his will related to military service. Ah yes, the military protection clause. Your grandfather was very specific about that. Can you tell me what it says? Well, it's quite detailed. But essentially, it provides legal protection for any of his descendants who are serving in the military. Protection against what he called family exploitation during service. What kind of protection? Are you having some kind of problem, Sarah? I told him the whole story, coming home to find my belongings sold. My mother's claimed that they had become family property. The antique dealer sale. Emma's college tuition. Oh my. Mr. Morrison said when I finished. This is exactly the kind of situation your grandfather was worried about. So the clause applies. It absolutely applies. Sarah, do you have time to come in today? I think you need to see this clause in its entirety. An hour later, I was sitting in Mr. Morrison's office, reading the most beautiful piece of legal writing I had ever seen. The Military Service Protection Clause, it was titled, and it was 4 pages of detailed legal language that essentially said that any descendant of William Chen who was serving in the military had absolute protection against family members selling, disposing of, or claiming ownership of their personal property. But that wasn't the best part. The best part was the penalty clause. Any family member who violates this protection, the will stated, shall be liable for triple damages of the fair market value of any property sold or disposed of, plus legal fees and court costs. Triple damages. Mr. Morrison, I said, what does this mean in practical terms? It means that if your mother sold 30,000 worth of your property, Shawesu, 90,000 plus legal fees, and this is enforceable. Absolutely. Your grandfather was very thorough. He had the clause reviewed by multiple attorneys to make sure it would hold up in court. What do I need to do? We need to file a petition with the probate court. Since this involves enforcement of a will provision, it has to go through probate. How long will that take? Given the clear language of the will, and the obvious violation, probably about 8 weeks. And my mother will have to pay. If the court finds in your favor, which I'm confident they will, yes, she have to pay triple damages plus legal fees. I signed the paperwork that day. 2 weeks later, my mother received a summons to appear in probate court. She called me immediately. Sarah, what is this? Why am I being sued? You're not being sued, Mom. The estate is enforcing a provision of Grandpa's will. What provision? The one that protects military family members from having their property stolen while they're overseas. Stolen. Sarah, we didn't steal anything. You sold my property without my permission and kept the money. What would you call that? It was family property. According to Grandpa's will, it wasn't. According to his will, any property belonging to a family member serving in the military is protected, regardless of where it's stored. I don't understand. You will when you get to court. Sarah, can't we work this out as a family? We could have worked it out as a family if you had called me before selling my stuff. Now, it's a legal matter. What do you want? I want the fair market value of everything you sold, plus the penalty that Grandpa's will specifies. What penalty? You'll find out in court. The court date was set for 6 weeks later. During that time, I hired professional appraisers to determine the exact value of everything that had been sold. The rare books alone were worth 22,000. Grandma Shuali Collectuion Vance, 8,500. The electronics and other items brought the total to $32,000. My mother spent those 6 weeks trying to get me to drop the case. Sarah, please, we're family. Family doesn't steal from each other. We didn't steal. We thought you had abandoned those things. I was serving my country, Mom. I wasn't abandoning anything. But 11 years. 11 years of military service, which Grandpa's will specifically protects. This is going to ruin us financially. You should have thought of that before you sold my property. What about Emma? She needs that education. Emma can get student loans like everyone else, or transferred to a state school. Sarah, please. No, Mom, you made your choice when you decided my belongings were family property. Now, you get to live with the consequences. The day of the court hearing arrived. Mom showed up with a lawyer she had hastily hired. I showed up with Mr. Morrison and a folder full of documentation. The judge was the Honorable Margaret Rodriguez, a woman in her 50s who had been handling probate cases for over 15 years. This is a petition to enforce a provision of the last will and testament of William Chen, deceased, she announced. Mr. Morrison, you're representing the estate. Yes, Your Honor, and we're seeking enforcement of the Military Service Protection Clause on behalf of Sarah Chen, the decedent's granddaughter. Mr. Patterson, the judge said to my mother's lawyer, you're representing Linda Chen. Yes, Your Honor. We're contesting the validity and applicability of this clause. Very well, Mr. Morrison. Please explain the clause in question. Mr. Morrison stood up and began reading from Grandpa's will. The Military Service Protection Clause states, any descendant of mine who is serving in the United States, military shall have absolute protection against family members selling, disposing of, or claiming ownership of their personal property, regardless of where such property is stored or for how long it has been stored. Continue, the judge said. This protection exists to prevent family members from taking advantage of military service members who are unable to personally oversee their possessions due to deployment or other military obligations, and the penalty provision. Any family member who violates this protection shall be liable for triple damages of the fair market value of any property sold or disposed of, plus legal fees and court costs. Judge Rodriguez looked at my mother's lawyer. Mr. Patterson, on what grounds are you contesting this clause? Your Honor, we argue that 11 years is an unreasonable amount of time to expect someone to store another person's belongings, and that the property had effectively been abandoned. Mr. Morrison, how do you respond? Your Honor, Sarah Chen was continuously serving in the Navy for those 11 years. She was deployed overseas for the majority of that time. The will specifically anticipates this situation and provides protection regardless of the duration of storage. Mr. Patterson, do you dispute that Ms. Chen was serving in the military? No, Your Honor. Do you dispute that her mother sold her belongings without her permission? No, Your Honor. But do you dispute that she used the proceeds for her own benefit? Your Honor, the money was used for family expenses. That's not what I asked. Did she use the proceeds for her own benefit? Yes, Your Honor. Judge Rodriguez turned to my mother. Mrs. Chen, please stand. My mother stood up, looking nervous. Mrs. Chen, did you sell your daughter's belongings while she was deployed overseas? Yes, Your Honor. But Did you have her permission to sell these items? No, Your Honor. But I thought, Mrs. Chen, I'm going to stop you there. This court is not interested in what you thought. This court is interested in what you did. She turned to Mr. Morrison. Mr. Morrison, what is the appraised value of the property that was sold? $32, Your Honor. We have certified appraisals for all items. And Mrs. Chen, how much did you receive from the sale of these items? My mother's lawyer whispered something to her. About $4,000, Your Honor. 400,432 worth of property. The antique dealer said. Mrs. Chen, you took $32,000 worth of collectibles and heirlooms to a single antique dealer. We thought that was better than a pawn shop. Did you attempt to get multiple appraisals? No, Your Honor. Did you attempt to contact your daughter before selling them? No, Your Honor. Did you research the value of rare books and vintage jewelry before selling them? Not really, Your Honor. Judge Rodriguez shook her head. Mrs. Chen, your daughter was serving her country overseas, and you sold her valuable possessions and family heirlooms for a fraction of their worth, without her knowledge or consent, and used the money to pay for your other daughter's expensive private college. Is that an accurate summary? When you put it like that, that's exactly how I'm putting it, because that's exactly what happened. Judge Rodriguez spent the next 15 minutes reading through Grandpa's will, paying particular attention to the Military Service Protection Clause. This is one of the most comprehensive and well-written protective clauses I've seen in 20 years of probate law, she finally said. Mr. William Chen clearly anticipated exactly this type of situation. She looked at my mother. Mrs. Chen, this clause exists specifically to protect military service members from family members who might take advantage of their absence. Your actions are precisely what this clause was designed to prevent. Your Honor, my mother's lawyer tried to interject. We'd like to argue that 11 years. Mr. Patterson, I've heard enough. The clause specifically states regardless of where such property is stored or for how long it has been stored, the duration is irrelevant. She turned back to my mother. Mrs. Chen, you violated a clear provision of your father-in-law's will. You sold property that was explicitly protected, and you did so for your own financial benefit. Your Honor, we needed the money for Emma's education. Mrs. Chen, your financial needs do not give you the right to steal from your daughter. I didn't steal. You sold property that didn't belong to you, without the owner's permission, and kept the proceeds. That is theft, regardless of your relationship to the owner or your intentions for the money. Judge Rodriguez looked at her paperwork. The court finds that Linda Chen violated the Military Service Protection Clause of William Chen's will by selling property belonging to Sarah Chen without her knowledge or consent. The court orders Linda Chen to pay Sarah Chen triple damages in the amount of $96,000, plus legal fees and court costs. My mother gasped. $96. That's $32,000 in actual damages, times 3, as specified in the will. Your Honor, I don't have $96,000. Mrs. Chen, you should have considered that before you violated the will. You have 60 days to make payment arrangements with Ms. Chen's attorney. What if I can't pay? Then we'll discuss asset seizure, including any assets that were purchased with the proceeds from the illegal sale. My mother started crying. That would include Emma's tuition money. Mrs. Chen, that tuition was paid with stolen money. If you cannot make restitution, we'll need to explore all available remedies. After the hearing, my mother approached me in the hallway. Sarah, please, can we work something out? What kind of something? I don't have $96,000. This is going to destroy us. You should have thought of that before you sold my stuff. What about Emma? She's already 2 years into her degree. Emma can transfer to a state school or take out student loans. Sarah, please, we're family. Family doesn't steal from each other. Mom, we didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't care enough to find out. You saw an opportunity to get some money for Emma's expensive college, and you took it. That's not true. It's exactly true. You thought I was just some sailor overseas who would never come back to claim her stuff. You thought you could steal from me, and I'd never know. We didn't think of it as stealing. What else would you call it? She didn't have an answer for that, Sarah. She said finally, what do you want from us? I want the money the court ordered you to pay. And I want you to understand that actions have consequences. And then what? Will you forgive us? Maybe. But things will never be the same. Why not? Because I know who you really are now. I know that when push came to shove, you chose to steal from your daughter rather than make a phone call to ask permission. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. Over the next 60 days, my mother scrambled to come up with the money. She had to take out a second mortgage on her house, withdraw money from her retirement accounts, and ask Emma to transfer to a state school to reduce expenses. Emma was furious. This is so unfair. She called to tell me, you've been gone for 11 years, and now you come back and destroy our family. I didn't destroy anything, Emma. Mom destroyed it when she stole from me. She didn't steal. Those things were just sitting there. Those things were mine, and now they're gone because your mother decided to sell them to pay for your expensive college. I needed that education. Then, you should have gotten scholarships or student loans like everyone else. You didn't even go to college, because I joined the Navy to serve my country, and while I was serving, your mother stole from me. She's not a thief. The court says otherwise. Emma hung up on me. A week later, my mother called. Sarah, we've managed to get most of the money together. Most of it, we're about $18,000 short, but we can pay that over time. The court order says 60 days. Mom, I know, but we've done everything we can. We took out a loan against the house. I cashed out my 401k. You should have thought of that before you stole from me. Sarah, please, we're trying to make this right. You're trying to avoid the consequences of your actions. There's a difference. What do you want us to do? I want you to pay what you owe. All of it. We don't have it all. Then you'll have to figure something out. In the end, they managed to scrape together the full amount by borrowing money from other family members and selling some of their own possessions. The whole extended family now knew what had happened, and most of them were on my side. I can't believe Linda did that. My Aunt Patricia told me, selling your things while you were deployed, that's just wrong. I'm proud of you for fighting back, my Uncle James said. Your grandfather would be proud too. 6 months after the court hearing, I used the money to expand my cybersecurity consulting business. It was ironic. My mother's theft had inadvertently provided me with the capital I needed to grow my company significantly. My relationship with my family never fully recovered. My mother and I speak occasionally, but there's a distance that wasn't there before. Emma still blames me for ruining her college experience, even though they ruined their own situation by stealing from me. But the most important thing I learned from this experience is that sometimes the people who love you most are the ones who protect you, even after they're gone. Grandpa William knew that military families sometimes face unique challenges, and he made sure I had legal protection against family members who might try to take advantage of my service. He couldn't have known exactly what would happen, but he knew something might happen, and he prepared for it. My mother called my belongings family property after selling them without my permission, but when probate court read the clause they had ignored, she discovered that stealing from a deployed service member comes with consequences she never imagined. The look on her face when the judge ordered her to pay $96,000 was something I'll never forget. But more than that, I'll never forget the feeling of knowing that my grandfather had protected me from beyond the grave. Sometimes, the best protection against family betrayal isn't confrontation or forgiveness. It's having a grandfather who understood that family members who serve their country deserve special protection from family members who serve only themselves.